You're listening to Five Things with Lisa Birnbach.
Hi, it's Lisa Birnbach, and welcome to Five Things That Make Life Better for the week of April 17th. Friends, I hope you've been managing as well as can be. I have been staying inside my apartment. It's now about 5 weeks, and it's starting to feel normal. One of my fears as we got used to living under an unpredictable president was that we would begin to normalize our new reality. Even before there were life or death implications of staying home, we've been shrugging our shoulders as truths became alternative facts, as riots were caused by some fine people, and the double standards of a self-dealing family with no consequences became more and more brazen. I feel that my job is more resistor than podcaster, and sometimes it overwhelms me. However, this is an interview show, and we have a great guest today. It's the writer Bess Kalb, well known for her humor pieces in The New Yorker and for being a staff writer on The Kimmel Show. Now she's a novelist. Her book is called Nobody Will Tell You This But Me, and she is our guest when we come back right after this. Last week, I recommended 5 different nonprofit organizations that were really helping out now that crisis is upon us and everywhere around us. This week, I want to talk to you about No Kid Hungry, because as the coronavirus has closed schools nationwide, millions of children in need have lost the school meals they depend on. You know, a lot of kids would not eat breakfast or lunch were it not for school. For many, it's the only healthy food they might get in a day. No Kid Hungry has a plan to feed these kids, but they need your help. Donate now at nokidhungry.org to help feed America's children during this crisis and in the months to come. That's nokidhungry.org. Thank you. Now you have written a memoir about your darling, beloved grandma, Bobby, called Nobody Will Tell You This But Me. And I tore through it, Bess, and I feel like we didn't have the same grandma, not at all, but there's so many similarities. And I just love that this was the first book you wanted to write, because I know you write for Jimmy Kimmel, and I know you've had offers to write long form before. And I guess your grandma is your spirit animal.
Yeah. That is definitely one way to put it. I think the book is really a book that she had ingrained in me since I was little, that this was the book that she had dispatched me to write. Mm-hmm. And it was almost an assignment that I had been given from birth. So though there have been other writing opportunities and ones that I've taken and pursued, this was the one that really felt like the sort of ultimate test of my abilities as both a writer and a granddaughter. Write her life down in her voice as best I could.
Well, one gets the impression from reading it that you spent a tremendous amount of time with her, and that she was, as you say, she was always telling you the stories of her mother, of her grandfather, of her brothers, of her uncles, of the world. She was really instructing you in carrying on her legacy in a way, because she and your mom did not have the closest of relationships for most of their lives.
That's right. I think that's a really good way of putting it, instructing me. It really was what she was doing, and it felt like a task that I had been given. These people that she talked about, her brothers and her mother and father, were people that I never met. They were all dead long before I was born.
Right.
So for me, they were characters in her story. And I think the richness of her storytelling and the specificity of her anecdotes and her memories made them real to me. And so as a writer, it was a pretty easy act of conjuring to just sort of say, okay, I'm basically going to report what I know from as close to a primary source as I had.
The other very interesting thing about the book is not only is it your grandmother's words told in her voice, but it's all matrilineal, really, one would never know that one had a brother. Right, Bess? Or
Yes, I love my brother very, very much. And
know
I
you
love him
do.
so much. I love him so much that I left him out of this book entirely.
Right. So this book reads like a woman had a husband who she adored and had one daughter. Does your mom have brothers or sisters?
Yes, and actually they're mentioned but not by name, and that's also purposeful. My grandmother has two sons and a daughter. And the idea to write a matrilineal love story was sort of my observation of a sort of a real gap in the storytelling marketplace, which is men write their histories, men write history, and women who maybe aren't the ones who are changing building infrastructure the way my grandfather did, or, being a great doctor the way my father was and is, and, sort of cementing themselves in the fabric of society in a very public way. There are women in the home who are creating life and raising the next generation of women who are expected to do the same thing. And it happens often, and especially in my grandmother's generation, it happens unacknowledged and unheralded. And so a matrilineal love story brings those women to the forefront of a narrative and of history, because it's their history. So I think focusing on women was a deliberate choice, and one that I thought mattered.
And also, I would say that some people, I'm only thinking aloud here, but some people are better parents or grandparents to, I think my grandmother was a better grandma to me than she was to my brothers, because she didn't really understand boys so well. It does happen. It does happen.
I mean, there's a real bond.
And also, it is true that so many people I know who are grandparents say things like, if I'd known how great it was, I would have skipped the kids altogether and gone straight to grandchildren. And it does seem like the connection that your grandma had with you, I can't imagine that, not that she didn't have enough love for everybody, but I can't imagine the time spent with you that she could also spend with your brother and her other grandchildren.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was born in sort of a crisis point for my mother. My mom was a second-year medical resident in a program that only had a few other women in their entire history. And so there was no such thing as a real maternity leave. There was barely such thing as being pregnant. In fact, my mom concealed her pregnancy up until it was comical. And so my grandma got this call when I was born and basically said, Mom, what do I do? Am I just going to leave this infant with a stranger? Help. And my grandma got on a plane, as she would tell me anytime I remotely bothered her throughout my childhood. She got on a plane. She wasn't a young woman. And she flew every Tuesday from Florida, where she lived, to New York City, where my parents lived. My father was also in the same medical residency at the time, so he was out as well. And she would watch me. And, I had two wonderful parents who certainly raised me, but I would often say my grandma raised me, because she would sit there. This is a detail that isn't in the book, but she would sit there in the apartment by the hospital, and we would watch Miami Vice together.
When you were how old?
6 weeks. And then she would tell me all about her plane ride and the people on the plane and who was irritating. And she would tell me about people at the club, and she would tell me about how she did in bridge, and she would tell me about how she did in golf, and she would complain about my mother. And that's what she was doing since before I could even see 2 feet in front of my own face. And yeah, she did continue to spend a lot of time with me after that, because I think in bonding with me as an infant so closely, that just became the established norm in our relationship, that she was there to hold me and take care of me whenever I needed it. And so she also became this source of fun that someone who is uniquely not a parent can be, which is, there are rules of the house, and then all bets are off as soon as grandma comes over, which
right.
You have a new grandson, right?
I do.
Do you find that there are certain indulgences and and treats that maybe your child wouldn't allow their baby to experience? But
well, we haven't gotten there yet because he's really a baby.
Yeah,
and he lives in California, so I'm not his regular babysitter. I told them I would. I told them if they stayed in New York, I would do a lot of that. But anyway, so no, I understand. I mean, my grandmother definitely spoiled me in some ways. The world that she came from, which you really do describe as vividly as I can imagine, is a world that doesn't exist anymore. And the kind of both hardscrabble school of life combined with being culturally and biologically Jewish, combined with real upward mobility. You know, we don't hear that story anymore because either people are making money who are guys in hoodies who are making giant money, and there's not so much soul as there was in that generation and my grandma's generation and my parents' generation. And you know what I loved about the book is your grandma and her husband, your grandpa, weren't entitled. You know, they worked hard to get it going. You describe a scene when they lived in an attic above her mother, right?
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right.
And there was there was a storm and the windows broke and their whole apartment, I guess a small whole apartment, was kind of destroyed. And your grandma looked at her husband and said, well, this is your new office. Yeah, and I'm going to be your new bookkeeper. I mean, which is so great. I mean, she really did feel that, and one gets the feeling that they were a great team.
They really were. I can't emphasize enough how instrumental my grandmother was to her husband's success and to my grandfather's success. They both came from nothing, but it was due to her sort of ambition for him and cunning and her insistence on a better life that they were able to make one out of absolutely nothing. I mean, my grandma was so poor when she was growing up. The only meat that she ate was because a cousin worked in the meatpacking district and shipping, and he would sort of give them graft of like offal, essentially, like intestines and cheeks from the trucks. And I feel like the idea of being born into extreme poverty,
right,
and then dying in this condo on the ocean in Florida is this astronomical trajectory.
It's the American dream.
It is. It's the American dream, but it was also her specific dream, and she achieved it. And it wasn't something that she felt entitled to ever. So, something that she would say growing up is money is round and it rolls. And you know that there was I think when you come from nothing, there's a sense that it could all go away because your foundation is nothing. You don't believe that this is that wealth or comfort is the norm.
And you don't trust that you can hold on to it because you don't have a history with it.
Definitely not. This isn't something that was passed on to you. This isn't something that was even an imagined reality growing up or for anyone she knew. I mean, my grandma grew up in a neighborhood in an immigrant community. Like her parents were immigrants from Russia, technically Belarus in the Pale of Settlement in the 1880s. And then her neighbors, in researching the book, I dug up census data for her street in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And I knew her street because I have a copy of her learner's permit from when she was 16 years old. 1 West Street in Greenpoint. And now it's right on the water.
It's probably, I don't know, a Sephora?
Oh, even worse, it's luxury condos. And I went the week she died. I went on this pilgrimage with my best friend, Victoire. She and I went on this sort of Bobby Bell odyssey, and we took a ferry from Manhattan to Greenpoint. and cross the water, and which I had never done before. I grew up in New York and I had never been on the ferry to Greenpoint, and went to 1 West Street. We went to the corner where the ramshackle building was, and it's these $4,000 a month studio apartments
that are LEED certified and
oh yeah,
come with every amenity.
Oh yeah, no, I walked in disbelief. I walked into this industrial chic, light-filled atrium that was the lobby, and a very cool guy behind the counter said, visiting? And I just sort of stammered, yes. He said, who are you visiting? And I said, my grandma used to live here.
Right. And he thought she was a
hipster.
a real estate stager from last week.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, all the way back from a week ago. One of the things that is so interesting about the book and the way you've shaped it is there are periods of narrative where you're channeling, I fully believe you're channeling your grandmother, telling her story and her mother's story and your mother's story in her words. And then you interject exchanges you've had with her from phone calls, from voicemails, and emails even. Now, did you save all the voicemails you could while she was alive?
I saved as many as my phone could hold, and I still have them saved. So if I'm not deleting the top 8 voicemails in my voicemail inbox, people can't leave me a voicemail. It says my mailbox is full.
It's full because Bobby Bell is dispensing her wisdom to you.
That's right. She lives in it. She lives in my voicemail inbox. And yes, I understand there is a cloud. I just don't trust it. And also I think the act of deleting one of her voicemails, even though I've uploaded them to my computer and emailed them to myself, the act of deleting them feels wrong. I can't do it.
No, I
so
understand.
They'll stay.
My mother's voicemail is completely clogged because she has her best friend last few voicemails, and she does not want to get rid of them. And believe me, I know less about saving a voice file than you do, and it would be disastrous. I get it.
That's right.
I get
That's
it.
That's right.
Are you able to listen to them, or are they still too upsetting? No. You can.
I had to for in writing the book. There were sort of many moments of catharsis in the channeling that you mentioned. Writing in her voice was extremely cathartic. I felt very close to her. There were several moments of catharsis in the process of conceiving of and then writing the book, and in the channeling that you spoke about, in writing in her voice, I was able to feel very close to her and feel her presence, to the extent that sometimes my husband would walk into the room where I was writing and I would be crying or laughing. It was a very manic experience.
Well, she was a very funny woman. I mean, she was hilarious.
She cracked herself up and she cracked me up. I get that from her. Nobody laughs at my jokes more than I do. And in recording the audiobook, I was asked to listen to the voicemails. And I was asked to share some of the voicemails to see if maybe there would be a few that we could throw in as extras or as to have some color along the way. And I said, sure. And then I took out my phone and I sat in my room for an hour just staring at it, because that was going to be the first time that I had listened to her voicemail since she died. And I prepared myself for an intensely sad experience. And I even remember telling my husband, I'm going to listen to my grandma's voicemails. Don't come in. This is going to be really hard for me. And he sort of went, yes, of course. Okay. And he told me that 5 minutes later, he heard this howling from our bedroom and didn't know whether to charge in. I was laughing.
That's nice.
Her voicemails were hilarious, and I was in tears because I was holding my stomach, and I couldn't believe how funny they were. She would call and say things like, and these were not voicemails that were in the book. One of the voicemails was, Bessie, hi. I saw the picture of your backyard. It's beautiful, but you must have an umbrella in the table. If you don't, you're going to turn bright red. And then if you don't, you're going to turn bright red, and don't say I never told you so. Get an umbrella.
And charge it to
that
me.
That was the first one I listened. Yeah, exactly. And try to use my card.
Yeah.
And from there, it just went on.
Well, didn't she tell you shouldn't live in some place because your hair would frizz?
San Francisco. She thought
San Francisco, your hair would frizz. But of course, the underlying message was, don't move so far away from me.
100%. The sun in Los Angeles that was not a voicemail about an umbrella. That was a voicemail about getting the hell out of the state.
Right. Well, she always had a little agenda with you.
Oh yeah, a little is one way to put it. It was pretty overt.
Now, I know you love your brother and that you're very close and that the relationship is all fair and healthy, but what was her relationship with your brother while you were absorbing as much of her as you could get?
I mean, he would really have to answer that. He has his own private and personal relationship with her. And my grandmother had 7 grandchildren,
right,
including me.
Right.
And she loved them all fiercely and loyally. And all of them have stories similar to mine about her, the tenacity with which she loved, and the meddling and the care and the worry. She extended that to all of her grandchildren, her children, her friends, and people she didn't even know.
So when she would call you 3 times a day to say, Bessie, are you wearing sunscreen? Or Bessie, I don't think the dress you picked is flattering, or whatever. She was also calling 6 other grandchildren with her ideas for them. She was always trying to improve their lives because she knew better.
My grandma lived with the phone in her lap and the phone book open. She was constantly in touch with everybody that she loved and was deeply involved in everybody's lives, to the extent that if one person in my family was pregnant and told my grandma, everyone in my family would know.
Yeah.
She was truly central command.
Yeah. I don't see that as a strange thing at all. I mean, I think that was her role, right? To let everybody know, sort of to keep everybody together.
Yeah, she's the Jewish Paul Revere.
Now, that's very funny. Now, she is a typical Jewish grandma to my eyes, but I don't know if would you say that when you described your grandmother, tell your friends about her or told your friends about her or introduced them to her, did they all come away thinking, oh, yeah, she's a Jewish grandmother? Or was it a little bit more nuanced?
Oh, well, they knew she was a character. I mean, I have a friend and I were in the back of a Lyft once, and my grandma called, and I knew it was going to be about the same fight that whatever she and I were having that day. I need to do this one thing. I need to do X. She knew that I was not going to do it, and so she was going to call me until I relented. And I just put my phone on speakerphone so that my friend could listen, and his mouth was open. He grew up, he grew up Mormon in Utah. He's my dear friend and writing partner, or office mate at Kimmel, Bridger Weiniger, and he had no context for Jewish grandma. I don't know if he grew up and knew a Jew, but he heard her on this call, and he was just covering his mouth, trying not to laugh out loud.
She's so funny, but also she's so direct. And I think in other cultures, people aren't as direct. This doesn't look good on you. Yeah. You should do this. You shouldn't do that. I want the best for you. Why don't you want to do the best for you? She had issues with your husband, right? At first?
Oh, well, not the second she met him, she was more on his side than mine. But, you know, I married a non-Jew, and I'm one of the only people in my entire lineage to ever do that on either side of my family. And so this could have been a cataclysm. But ultimately, I think in her most loving and most Jewish act, she embraced the person that would make her grandchild happy. And it didn't hurt that he was majoring in business at the time.
It's almost Jewish. And,
Right.
You go through the whole arc of your courtship through the voicemails. And it's really, really charming. It always makes me wonder how our grandparents knew how to find someone they loved without the efforts that we all made in our lives. They didn't go to couple counseling. They didn't live together to see how they connected. They didn't, they barely knew one another when they got married, which is the case of your grandparents.
Right. Well, my grandparents definitely courted each other.
They
dated
courted, but they didn't know each other for too long before.
No, yeah, it's true. I think maybe I think this is almost excusing her impatience with why my husband and I dated for years before we got married. You're right. I think she came from a generation where you knew when you knew.
You knew when you knew. Right. And she kept saying, when is your engagement? When you were just interested in having a relationship. You weren't even thinking of marriage. She probably pushed you to marry before you even considered it.
Well, she also was good at reading my heart, whether it was over, plate of fried calamari or a dress or a husband. She knew that when there was something that was desirable, she would just sort of be over my shoulder going, let's go for it. And so I don't think she would have pushed me to make any kind of commitment to anything that would make me unhappy.
Oh, right. It was all because she knew what you wanted maybe better than you knew what you wanted.
I think in many ways she did. My grandma also, to give you a sense of just how Jewish this got around my wedding, she pushed me to get, I almost said she pushed me to get married. I'm not going to say that, but she was excited about the idea of me being married to the point of hysteria. And she got very ill in the months before my wedding, to the extent that we almost changed our wedding location to be closer to her. Or at least to be more accessible.
Right.
It was on an island, and we almost changed it to the mainland because it might have been too difficult for her to get on a ferry or a plane.
Right.
And it was touch and go. This was in 2013.
Wow.
And the week after my wedding, I got a call from her. And she was at Neiman Marcus. She was running around. She knew that there was a sale, but she thinks it was in the wrong department. Nothing is on sale. There are no cashmere sweaters on sale. They're all full price. She's not going to buy full price. She was going a mile a minute, running around at Neiman Marcus, and I just sort of held the phone away from my head and said, "I cured her."
I was just going to say the marriage made her better.
I mean, it was the rally heard around the world.
And she
it was unbelievable.
And she lived for years thereafter.
And she went on to live another half decade. Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, she also danced the hora at my wedding with more exuberance than any of my friends. She was do-si-doing. She almost dislocated my arm at my wedding.
Oh, that's a beautiful granddaughter story. That is just a beautiful story. Bess,
sure, but it's also, there's nothing more invigorating than getting what she wanted.
Well, yeah, that was a victory. That was a victory for Bobby.
Yeah, it was a victory. Yeah.
You're very gentle and very interesting on the subject of your mother and your grandma, because they had a lot of friction. And of course, you tell the story from your grandma's point of view, not your mom's. But they did get much, much closer after you were born.
Yes.
I guess your mom realized what a sacrifice it is to have a child.
Yeah, entirely. I think in having my own child, I was surprised to be flooded with so much empathy and sympathy for my mother immediately in the days after giving birth. I looked at my child and went, oh God, this is why she was so goddamn worried all the time.
Right. Right.
And I can't exactly speak for her, even though my mother was the primary source of this book, and her relying on her on recorded conversations with her was integral to writing this. But the days and weeks after I was born was a time when she was able to see what motherhood meant, and in doing that was able to see what her mother saw in her.
Right.
And I think she was able to uncover love that maybe my grandmother hadn't been so forward with during my mother's childhood. My mom innately knew that the love was there.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there's also a reliance that happens as a woman who gives birth. You look to your mother almost immediately
for advice. Yeah,
the person who did this before you,
right,
is responsible for you. And I think that my mom, in having me, was able to rely on my grandma in a very real and immediate way, which is something that she had spent a rebellious childhood and teenagehood resisting. Suddenly, at her most vulnerable, she needed her mom.
And her mom, who was in Florida, would fly to New York every week for a few days to take care of you. I mean, that's a big gift for.
It's a big schlep.
It's a big schlep. So now that you're a mom, are there certain lessons of your grandma that you feel like you want to very deliberately bring into your son's life?
Yeah, I mean, I dedicated the book to him. I said, thank you, Grandma, and for my son. And I want the book to serve as his sort of touchstone and his, I guess, Rosetta Stone for her. The same way that my grandma gave me stories of her mother, and that her mother was very alive and her brothers were alive for me. So I hope the lessons in the book are lessons that he takes to heart. But I also think this poor kid is going to grow up hearing all about her constantly. He'll be like, oh, well, my grandma would never let you do that. My grandma would never let you go without an undershirt.
Right.
My grandma would never let you trick or treat without a jacket. I don't care if this is what Iron Man wore. Iron Man doesn't live in a 60-degree wind chill, whatever.
Right.
It's a desert and there's no atmosphere. You're going to be freezing.
Right.
I mean, I'm already turning into her around there. One of the real public fights that my husband and I have had since welcoming our child into the world was when we were walking around our neighborhood, and apparently I have no memory doing this. Apparently the entire time we were walking, I was putting my baby's hat further and further on his head, and he just looked at me and he goes, he's okay. and I flew off I was like, he's freezing. I literally spent the entire walk nudging because I thought the baby was cold. And I live in Los Angeles. I think it was maybe 64 degrees.
Right. And a brisk day.
Yeah, exactly. It was room temperature at coldest.
I remember so vividly my mother saying when I was a little girl, Lisa, I'm cold. Go put on a sweater.
Yep. That is, that's why we have survived.
Exactly. How old is your baby?
He's almost 6 months old next week.
Wow. Well, congratulations for giving birth.
He's a genius.
To your genius son, and for giving birth to this wonderful, feel-good, feel wonderful, nostalgic family book it's really intimate. It's really lovely. You've done such a wonderful job. I feel that I know your family now.
Thank you so much for saying that. It means so much to hear from you, to hear that from you. So thank you. I really appreciate it. I hope my family does as well.
Yeah, I hope they do too. Well, obviously they've read it, right?
Yeah, they have.
They've read it. But now I've written down all the family names. The Brazel, Oteski, Otis, Bell, Kalb stories come to life to the public. And that's really great. It's a wonderful story. And it'll make a wonderful movie or play. I've already cast it in my mind.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I'm working on it. So.
I'm sure you are. So now, Bess, young Bess, as I like to call you,
yes.
It's time for your 5 things that make your life better. I have your list right in front of me. I hope you do too.
I am pulling it up right now. I had my computer closed. I'm opening it.
Your list is great. Your first one made me laugh because I remember, I had 3 science experiments, I call them, my exhibits, and I thought my house was taken over by the Fisher-Price monsters. I mean, there's a while that your living room is all plastic crap. But number one for you?
My number one thing that makes my life better, unfortunately, is the hideous Fisher-Price, I'm going to give its Christian name, Fisher-Price Rainforest Friends Jumparoo in my living room.
You know what's
it
probably sprawls all over your living room.
Oh, it's enormous. I don't have a big living room, but I have a very big Jumparoo.
You know what embarrassed me when I had babies was that the names, you don't really want to say, honey, can you please pass my Fisher-Price Rainforest Friends Jumparoo? I want to put it
saying
in.
Jumparoo.
I know.
It's an indignity.
It is.
And it's a nightmare.
It's got to change. It's got to change. And you're one of the people who can make it change. Jumparoo
maybe just call it sort of an aerobic companion.
Yes, an aerobic companion, a calorie converter.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
Jumparoo,
a sort of a motor skills development situation.
a motor skills improvement model.
That's right. That's right.
Transducer.
No, instead
it's a Jumparoo.
It's the damn Jumparoo, and
Jumparoo.
Is a godsend.
Yeah,
it is something created by both the devil and God together.
Yes, it is. And in this Jumparoo, I'm taking it. It's the same sprawling, hideous Fisher-Price Rainforest Friends Jumparoo that my son and daughter-in-law have. Your baby can lie under it and have literally hours of fun. Number 2.
Oh, the block button on Twitter.
Okay. Tell me more.
The block button is a double-edged sword. I've been blocked. I've been blocked by the President of the United States, which was illegal, and he had to unblock me, or his minions. I'm sure it wasn't him, but somebody unblocked me. But so for a while, I crusaded against the block button privately.
I see where you're going now.
There's no better way to... I think Twitter is in many ways a great tool for, wondering if there was just an earthquake. There's no website that'll tell you faster. And it's obviously a great source of community. That it has been an instrument of revolution. It has given people a voice who otherwise wouldn't have one. It's also a breeding ground for some of the worst trolls on the internet.
Right.
And
people who don't have the courage to say what they want to say or insult somebody under their own name and photo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is cowardice. Exactly. And so to deal with those people, the block button exists. And there are days where I'll tweet something that's mildly political or overtly political, and then instead of poisoning my life with horrifying replies, I just immediately block them and go on with my day.
That's a beautiful
breastfeeding
story.
To the Irishman.
It's a beautiful day. It's kind of like the Fisher-Price Rainforest Friends Jumparoo. It's both good
hilarious.
And poison.
You know what? One of the little satanic buttons should be a block button on that Jumparoo.
Oh, that's a great idea.
He can practice.
For the next generation of digital natives.
Right. That's a great idea.
Jumparoo 2.0. Yeah, then the name
Maybe
could
I
be...
don't need to write a second book.
And also, it'll be a longer name.
Yeah, exactly. Serves them right.
The new and improved Fisher-Price Rainforest Friends Jumparoo.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It has that classic Fisher-Price ring to it.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Okay, number 3.
This is the most important item on the list. And I'm going to out my favorite restaurant, and I'm upset about doing that, but I also have to be honest with you in what is things that makes my life better. It is this. It's the Rigatoni Bolognese from Speranza on Hyperion in Silverlake. Speranza is a restaurant that has no signage. It looks like a parking lot. You have to go through a tarp to get there. It's all outside, and it is just this handmade pasta from this northern Italian couple. It is so good. You can't physically spend more than $20 there. And the Rigatoni Bolognese is a tonic, and it should be covered by health insurance.
Wow.
It's so good.
Well, one of
So
my
good.
exhibits lives in Silverlake, so
Oh.
I may have to
I
go
bet,
try
I bet
it
they know
out.
Speranza.
Then she probably does, yeah.
Good.
So I'm going to try that at Speranza. Number 4.
Yeah, since having a kid, I've become sort of militant with my closest female friends, and I've ended up going on like 2 or 3 walks a week, and it's with just sort of the baby on my chest, and it's been really a great reprieve and a wonderful way to make it through the insanity that happens on the news and outside of our personal lives. Taking time to just walk and talk, and sometimes just walk and not talk with
Right.
to paraphrase a great Christopher Guest line.
Yes.
Is so important to me, and one of the best parts of parental leave has been really reconnecting with female friends who I otherwise wouldn't see during the day.
Right, because you work a long day.
I work a long day, and so meeting up for people who work long hours and who work office hours, your time to meet up with friends is when you're exhausted. And having these days has been a wonderful, refreshing way to just enjoy friends in the sunshine.
That's
Makes
wonderful.
life a lot better.
That's wonderful. And number 5.
Ugh. I hate. By the way, when I say what 5 is, there
Yes.
might be a machine response in my house.
Oh, that's right.
So
Whisper
number
it,
5
whisper it.
Yeah, right. Number 5, begrudgingly, Alexa. You can't hear
Can
it,
we-
but
can
there was
we-
the faintest murmur. You can put it in.
Did it say something?
Yeah.
Oh, no. She's listening to
Yeah,
you.
she's always listening. Since having a kid, so Alexa was something that I did not want and object to on every level imaginable. It is evil, it's listening, targeted advertisements, selling our personal data. Why would you want to have a digital spy in your home? The answer is handless convenience with a baby.
Yeah, when
I
you're
can just
holding-
go, Alexa, play Graceland by Paul Simon in baby room. And suddenly we are dancing to Boy in the Bubble.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I get
it's
it.
Great. Yeah.
Alexa, what's the weather? Yeah.
Exactly.
Jinx. Yeah. I don't have it,
Yep.
but I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
Well, Bess, my only regret is that we didn't get to see one another in person, but I have enjoyed
mine
this
too.
conversation thoroughly, and I wish you all the best as you embark on your book tour and you return to work and you have to take time away from the baby and let someone else watch Miami Vice with him. But I loved the book. It's called, again, Nobody Will Tell You This But Me. Bess Kalb, all the best to you.
Thank you. And to you, Lisa. Thank
you. And now, my 5 things for the week. Number 1, you. That's right, you. You make masks. You raise money for food for those doing the saintly work in the hospitals and the clinics. You applaud and strike pots and cheer every night at 7 p.m. And there's some of you who do a little more. The actress and activist Celia Keenan Bolger is part of a drive to provide dinners to essential hospital workers every night. You can give a little money to that effort, and her link is on my website at lisabirnbach.com. Number 2, so many people have gone over and above the call of duty. For example, Broadway star Brian Stokes Mitchell, who recently recovered from COVID, now sings his trademark song, The Impossible Dream, because he was the man of La Mancha on Broadway, from his apartment window every single evening. A link to that is also on my blog at lisabirnbach.com. I also just learned on Facebook that a friend's son who practices medicine in Louisville, Kentucky, is now en route to New York to volunteer in an emergency room at NYU Hospital. It is vital to remind ourselves that there are wonderful, decent people, that decency and goodness is innate, or are innate because they're plurals. Number 3, making your bed every day. Now, in telling you this, I am reminding myself too. If we forget to make our bed in the morning, it sends the message that you're only temporarily up or you're going back to sleep and you're not set for the day. And strangely, an open bed is not welcoming. The made bed says you're ready for your day. Number 4. Try to use your new exercise equipment every day, if only for a short time. And if you're like me, you've bought some new equipment. And number 5, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Whomever he officially reports to now or in the future, he is our beacon of scientific truth. I worry about his safety and health the way I worry about Ruth Bader Ginsburg's, and I am so grateful when he appears on our TV daily. In conclusion, friends, stay home, stay safe, only go out when absolutely necessary, but act natural. Bye-bye.
That was 5 Things with Lisa Birnbach. New episodes every Friday, if she remembers.